Hi, everyone. Welcome to Science and Nature speaker series. So I'm going to just go over a few housekeeping items. So we are recording this presentation live on Facebook and we'll be uploading it afterwards. To people online, please feel free to let us know what city you're watching from. And if you have any questions, just add them into the chat. And everyone in person, thank you so much for coming. You can help yourselves to refreshments in the back of the room, and then we'll be taking any questions at the end of the presentation. So I'd like to take a moment to respectfully acknowledge that we are on the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee. We offer our gratitude to the Mohawks of Akwesasne for their care for, teachings about our earth and our relations. We are grateful for the time and knowledge that our neighbors gracefully share with us, and we strive to improve the health of the great river. So if you'd like to know more about what's happening at the River Institute, then follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And to see this presentation again and any previous ones, you can check our Science and Nature website just at the bottom of the screen there. So every month I will try to highlight any upcoming events happening around the Upper St. Lawrence area. So next month we do have a few. So the City of Cornwall is hosting their annual Eco Day on Saturday, April 18th at the Cornwall Benson Center. And then we will be having our second Phragmites Lunch and Learn speaker series on April 15th at 1 about Phragmites and goats in Ontario. That will be held virtually, and the presenters are Nancy Laser and Meredith Crouch from OPG. And then there's also a BioBlitz happening around the Upper St. Lawrence River that will be running from April 12th to April 18th. So just 1 week this year, and that is in collaboration with the City of Cornwall and many other organizations. So check out our socials for more information on the BioBlitz. And all of these events are free, so even better. And then here. So our next Science and Nature presentation will be Thursday, April 16th by Patricia O'Hara, and she will be talking about the Great River Network and might include some different fish species that she has encountered in the river. And then for tonight, tonight's presenter is Mathieu Lecompte from Parks Canada. So Matt is a resource management officer at Thousand Islands National Park, joining the resource conservation team in 2018. Matt completed his undergraduate degree in 2016 at the University of Guelph with a Bachelor of Science in Environmental Sciences. Over the past 5 years, Matt has led the park's rare program. So today, Matt will be talking about the turtle species that call the river home, projects being done to protect these and other herptiles, and ways you can help make a difference. So I'd like to bring Matt to the front, please.
Thanks. Hello, everyone. Just get my presentation up here. Perfect. Thanks, everyone, for coming to join me for the presentation today. And thank you to the River Institute for hosting me and having this great series for us to talk about things like this. And today, I'll be talking mostly about turtles, a few other reptile and amphibians as well. But yeah, we'll be talking mostly about turtle recovery and education in Thousand Islands National Park. And so we'll talk about the biodiversity of the region, the species that are found here, like the turtles, where they live, when you'll see them, and we'll talk about how there's species at risk and threats that they're facing and programs that we're doing to help them in ways that you can help them as well. And so this is just proof that I do work with turtles to show it off, and some other animals here. And yeah, I love this microphone. I won't be singing like Britney Spears today, but I feel pretty special wearing this thing. But this is some of the team that I've worked with, and so yeah, I work for Parks Canada. so important. So we can see here the Adirondack to Algonquin Park corridor, the A to A corridor, and that is just a massive migration corridor for species. It's one of the largest remaining intact forests in eastern North America, and so that's a critical land bridge connecting those two big plots of land. And Thousand Islands National Park is located right in the middle of that. Just in red there is some of the park lands there. So kind of stepping stones for species that are migrating that they can get through. And it's an extremely biodiverse area. So it's shaped by the Frontenac axis. So there's this ridge of really ancient rock. There's the St. Lawrence River running right through it that kind of has an effect on the climate there. And it's really a meeting place for different ecosystems. So you have the Canadian Shield to the north coming down. You'll notice when you're driving on the 401 through there, it's suddenly just a much different landscape, and that allows a lot of also be calling them herptiles. And so in 2019, the park and the area, Thousand Islands, was declared a nationally important amphibian and reptile area by the Canadian Herpetological Society. Just recognizing the amount of species that you'll find here, and it really has so many different habitats that can support these different species. So there's 9 species of snakes, there's Ontario's only lizard, the 5-lined skink. We have the 5 turtle species that we'll talk about lots coming up. There's 7 species of salamanders and 10 species of frogs and toads. And among these 32 species, 10 are actually species at risk. And we are just behind Georgian Bay Islands National Park. They have 33 herptiles, the most in Canada. And so we recently have observed 2-line salamander in the park, which added to our list, but we're still one behind and have a healthy competition of trying to match their level. But really, Ontario is a hot spot for these type of species. And of course, we'll talk about all the turtles that are found here. And so the first one that I'll talk about is the common snapping turtle, a turtle most people have probably seen. It is a species at risk, as are all the 5 turtles that are found in the Thousand Islands. It's the largest turtle that you'll find around here. I like to call it a defensive turtle, not an aggressive turtle as it's known as. It has really a bad reputation for being that snappy turtle, and it is because they're so big, have such a large mouth. The males get much larger than the females, usually up to 40 pounds, but there's giants that can reach up to 75 pounds, much larger. They're really the most prehistoric looking turtles you'll see around, very dinosaur-like. You'll see at the top here, this is a hatchling, and it has a very ridged shell. And that is a really defining mark of a snapping turtle. And as it ages, it starts to smooth out over time. Like this one's quite a bit older and it's starting to lose those edges. But you'll also see the serrated edges along the scutes here. That is definitive of a snapping turtle. And one of the reasons why they might have such a snappy behavior is their plastron, so the bottom of their shell there you can see, it's very small. So in comparison, beside that is a map turtle. And so a lot of turtles in Ontario, when they get scared, they hide, put their head in their shells. Some are better than others, but they kind of hide away. But the snapping turtle's body, its shell is so small, it really has nowhere for that large head to go. So it's a bit of a trade-off of leaving them vulnerable and being so snappy. And oh boy. I'll use this thing. And so, yeah, you'll find them in quite a bit of habitat, but they prefer shallow, slow-moving water. Sorry, as I work through this. There we go. This isn't a turtle you'll see really basking very much. Unlike a painted turtle, which we'll see, they rarely are climbing up on logs, but they like to float as they bask. So paddling around, it might catch you off guard. You might see something that looks like vegetation, and it's actually just a snapping turtle basking at the top of the water's edge, or they like to bask in the shallows, not too far from shore. It could startle you if you're not expecting it. And it's an omnivore, so it'll eat algae, fish, it'll eat dead fish, carrion, and they actually eat a lot more plants than animals, so kind of a misconception there. And like a lot of Ontario turtles, it's quite a late bloomer, so the female turtles don't start reproducing until about 17 to 19 years old. And so they need to survive a really long time before they start laying eggs. And when they start laying eggs, they start laying a lot, which is a strategy of most of these turtles. Typically, nesting snapping turtle will lay between 25 and 45, but we can see much more. There's been reports of like 100 plus turtle eggs. I know you've seen a lot larger ones. 60 plus?
We were 59, yeah.
59 in Akwesasne. And so these turtles, like the other turtles found in Thousand Islands National Park, the sex of the turtle is determined by nest temperature. So depending on the temperature that year, you might get more females or male hatchlings, which is what we take into consideration when we're incubating eggs, which I'll touch on soon. And we'll go on to the Blandings turtle, a favorite turtle of many people. It can be known as the smiling turtle, and really the definitive thing to look for here is that yellow throat. No other turtle you'll see will have that distinct yellow throat there. Another thing to look for is the shape of the shell. It's a dome shell. In the water, again, if it's like aquatic floating, it looks like a helmet. It's just out there in the wetland. Another interesting thing about Blandings turtle is they have a functional hinge in their plastron. So at the bottom of their shell, unlike the snapping turtle, they can actually close their shell. They can all fully hide in, and then they can shut it even more with a hinge to stop predators from getting at them. And the males and females are a bit different in their body composition. So it's tough to tell, but this turtle here on the right is a male, and it has a concave plastron. So the bottom of the shell actually goes in a bit, and that is a benefit for mating. It also has a thicker tail, and that's one way to tell them apart. They are even slower at reproducing than snapping turtles. They can take up to 25 years to reach that breeding age. And they also live for a really long time, known to live over 80 years. So they take a really long time to reproduce, but then can live for a long time. They're a lot more picky about their habitats, so they like marshes, ponds, and bogs. They're often found in a lot of places where beaver dams are found. They also use a lot more habitat, so they travel quite a bit. They've been observed nesting up to 6 kilometers away from kind of their home range, and they're the most terrestrial of the turtles in the area, so they're using a lot of different wetlands. They're traveling far to lay their nests to find their overwintering sites. So this is part of the reason why they are an endangered species federally. So they're the most at-risk turtle in Thousand Islands National Park because they're more susceptible to being hit on roads and for their habitats being fragmented, just because they're traveling so much. And an interesting thing is about their range. On the far left of the map, you can see there is 20% of their global range is found in Ontario and Quebec, mostly in Ontario there, but so one of the smaller ranges of turtles you'll find in the area. And we'll go on to probably the most common turtle people have seen, the Midland painted turtle. It's also a species at risk. It's a special concern. Unlike the Blandings turtle, it has quite a large range. There's different species of it. There's the eastern painted, western painted, but it's also a declining species, mostly because of habitat loss, and we'll get into that a bit more. You'll find them in almost any wetland habitat. They can survive in a lot of different habitats. They don't travel as much as blandings turtles. They are able to reach maturity a lot quicker. Females in like 6 to 15 years, and um, for these ones, they lay about 4 to 13 eggs, so not that large amount that snapping turtles are laying. Um, Interesting thing about the hatchlings for painted turtles um, in this part of North America is they're finding that many of them are overwintering in the nest, so the eggs will hatch in the fall, but the hatchlings will stay in that nest chamber and won't emerge until the following spring, as a kind of a strategy to survive that initial period where they're so small and maybe vulnerable to the cold temperatures. So that's one thing they do. Map turtles are a bit similar. Other species can do it; they're just not as successful at doing that. And yeah, they don't travel as much as blandings turtles. They're usually laying nests within 200 meters of the water, but they do travel farther than that. And like most of these turtles we'll talk about, they have quite strong fidelity to their sites. So when they find a good nesting spot, a good spot to overwinter, to brumate or hibernate, they're going to be going back to that spot pretty much every year unless it's not there anymore. And we've got the eastern musk turtle, or the stinkpot turtle. And this turtle is also a species at risk. It's special concern. It was previously listed as threatened, but downlisted, not because the threats got reduced or anything, but because they found more of them. So they're very hard to find, these turtles. They are quite secretive. They don't bask very much. Um, their skin, I guess, dries out a lot quicker than other turtles, so they're not out basking in the sun as much. They're often basking underneath lily pads. So you'd have to go around flipping lily pads to try to find them. They don't travel really far on land. They're nesting pretty much right beside the water's edge when possible. And yeah, they're known as the stinkpot turtle because they have glands on their body that get smelly as a defense mechanism. And snapping turtles also have this, but they have the whole snapper thing. So I guess they went with that for the name. And yeah, it's almost exclusively an aquatic turtle. Um, yeah, it's very hard to detect them in surveys. They're often under-surveyed because of this problem. And they do like bigger water, like rivers and lakes. They just like to hang out in the slow-moving parts of them, in wetlands and shallows, bays, and the edges, but they're still in those bigger areas. Um, in one study, in 2007 in the Thousand Islands National Park, they found they're on average were 5 meters from shore in less than a meter of water. So they're really hanging out kind of on the edges of the water in shallow areas. And they do reach maturity a little bit quicker, 5 to 9 years. We don't really know how long they live. It's been said around 30 years or so. Um, they only lay about 2 to 6 eggs, and these nests are so shallow. So we've incubated some of their nests. They're about 10 centimeters on average underground. Often these nests I've only found them because I see an egg and it's actually not in the nest cavity, it's beside it. And the rest of the eggs are like buried under a tiny bit of sand, and the other ones um, was just kind of trailing behind, or they're under leaf litter. It's amazing to me how any of them really survive those conditions. And yeah, it seems like it's done in a rush. Maybe it is. And yeah, it's kind of a miracle we've been able to incubate some of them, as I'll show you soon. And yeah, on the far right here, you'll see that is a hatchling turtle. The musk turtle hatchlings are among like the smallest turtles in the world, really. I'll show another picture soon that shows how small they are. And for this turtle, it's really to identify it, a really highly domed shell. And it has these eyes, these lines above and below their eyes. Um, and they're very small. They'll just fit in your hand. Like those are full size musk turtles. And another turtle here. The fifth turtle, I guess, is the northern map turtle. This is a special concern species at risk. It's a bigger turtle. It's like just a bit smaller than, quite a bit smaller than a snapping turtle, but larger in size, like a dinner plate or something. And it has this serrated ridge right down the middle here. That's a pretty prominent feature if you're looking from far away. And it's known as the map turtle because it has these contour-looking lines all through the shell, as you can see, that really look like a map. And so that was why I was giving that name. And even on the skin, it has those lines. And here's a hatchling. It has a crazy amount of detail looking at it. Even as a baby, they're really born as miniature-looking adults. And for these turtles, the females get much larger than the male turtles, and they kind of have different diets. So the females are primarily eating mollusks like snails, and the males are eating more insects and crayfish. And some studies have found them feeding a lot on zebra mussels, which could be a benefit. But yeah, they really rely on big water, like the St. Lawrence River, really well oxygenated areas to support them. The females have a much larger range than the males. They travel up to 24 kilometers, but usually less, but that's kind of the max that they've seen. And they take up to 14 years before they lay eggs as well, so a bit of a theme here. And yeah, there's great videos from Cubes, the Queen's research station, of map turtles overwintering under the ice up in the water in groups together. So they sometimes hibernate communally, and they are in a state of brumation, but they're still moving around a little bit. But they discovered from that communal basking can lead to mass predation events. So they've seen river otters find those communal places for them to hibernate, and then the river otters have a really large selection to choose from. And so yeah, they kind of live in similar habitats to that little tiny stinkpot turtle. They just use much more of the habitat and much more deeper and bigger areas. And so yeah, I kind of mentioned all this, but turtles are living in very different wetland environments. You've got Blanding's turtles that are kind of more specialists, needing multiple marshes and areas. They need clean water and mucky bottoms to thrive, and large connected habitats. We've got the lake and river dwellers like the musk turtle and the stinkpot turtle around. And then we've got kind of the more adaptable species like the painted turtle and the snapping turtle. And yeah, turtles live mostly aquatically, but they also need land to lay their nests, to travel to their nesting sites, to travel to other wetlands or overwintering areas. They also need areas to bask, to warm up. They need those nesting and overwintering grounds. And so right now, if we're thinking about turtles, we're thinking of them kind of getting to the end of that wintertime brumation. So brumation is the hibernation that cold-blooded animals are doing. So they're not in a deep sleep. They're kind of just in a low power mode. They're under the water at the bottom, or they're deep into the mud. And they're really shutting down their body. They're metabolically really shutting down, really slowing down their heartbeat. Like I've read 1 beat every 10 minutes. They're really kind of just not eating, not drinking, not passing waste for the winter. They're kind of semi-conscious, so they can still sense changes in light. And on warmer days, they might even move around a little bit, depending on the species. And one of my favorite facts about turtles I used to share was how they would breathe through their butts through the winters. So cloaca, through their cloaca, that's how they breathe through the winter. Professor in Ottawa or Carleton recently wrote that that's mostly a myth, that that some turtle species do that quite a bit, but for Ontario species, it's a minor way they're doing it. It's mostly exchanged through their skin and through the lining of their mouth. So I guess it's still somewhat true, but I gotta change that a bit. And yeah, so now we're moving into the spring. We could expect turtles to start waking up in the next couple weeks. Seems like a bit of a later start, but we're getting there. We'll get there pretty soon. And that's when turtles start emerging, start their active season. Most of those turtle species are mating in the spring. Some of them are mating in the spring and the fall. I forget, but one of the species prefers to mate in the fall, but it's usually that time. They'll start basking to warm up after that long, cold winter. There's some hatchling emergence. Like I said, some of those turtles were overwintering and are coming out now. And around the late May through very early July, that's when turtles will start nesting. You'll start seeing them more on the roads, traveling to their nesting sites. Through the summer, they'll be doing their seasonal movement. They'll be finishing up that nesting. They'll be trying to put on weight, trying to grow. It's such a short season in Ontario for turtles and other reptiles to get there. And in the fall, they start moving back. We'll get other hatchling emergence. So those eggs that were laid will start hatching usually in September, and it'll be back to winter before we know it, I guess. That's another great note to end it on. And so why do we care about turtles? It's more than just having the biodiversity of it. They are keystone species, so the food web is relying on them, specifically in wetlands. So naturally, they provide many eggs for predators, sometimes unnaturally, which I'll get into. The hatchlings do as well. They can be called custodians of the wetlands, so they can be like the cleanup crew. They like to eat a lot of dead fish and animals, which can remove harmful bacteria, keeping the water clean. And something I recently learned was that there's evidence that turtles are spreading seeds. So as most turtles get older, their diet shifts more to plants, and they're passing seeds through their body, and as they're making their travels to the next place, like a Blanding's turtle, they might be dropping seeds. So that's just kind of something interesting, that they might be spreading plants to new areas as well. And so really it's a great two-way relationship between plants, or between turtles and the wetlands, is why we should care. We should also care because they've been here for millions and millions of years, and they have a right to exist here, and they've survived for so many years that just in the last century with development and cars shouldn't really be what takes them out at this point. So that talk brings me to why that all Ontario turtle species are at risk, and so that's the 5 that I've talked about. And so these are species that are in danger of becoming extinct from the wild if special consideration and help isn't brought. And so there's different levels of risk. We have the extirpated, so that species is gone. At some level, it's endangered. So like our Blanding's turtle federally, it's facing imminent extirpation or extinction. There's threatened and special concern. So that's what our other turtles were at as well. And just to show, this figure might be a little bit dated, but Ontario seemed to have 227 species at risk, and in the Thousand Islands there was around 59. I think these numbers have shifted a bit, but it just shows the amount here. And so why are these turtles at risk? One of the biggest reasons currently is road mortality. So like I said, these turtles are nesting on land. Often they love gravel shoulders. It's kind of the perfect area for them to lay their eggs. It's sunny, it's well drained. Turtle eggs rely on moisture and temperature to incubate, and so it seems like the perfect spot that we've created for turtles to nest. But that obviously leads for them crossing roads and getting hit by cars. There was a study done on the Thousand Islands Parkway, I guess several years ago now, but they found just over 16,000 vertebrate deaths. So this was a lot of frogs, but included turtles and snakes as well, just between April and October. So unfortunately, the active season of most of these species correlates to kind of the busy road times, especially in the Thousand Islands, when there's more tourists and more people out on the roads. That's what kind of when turtles are emerging, so it's not a great combination. Having habitat loss and fragmentation is a big threat to them. So over the last 100 years or so, there's been a lot of habitats lost to development and agriculture, which has led to them having less areas to be, and not just habitats lost, but habitats fragmented. So habitats broken up by roads and less quality habitats where these turtles are traveling in between. Another one I have here is nest predation. So nest predation is a normal part of kind of the strategy of turtles. But in many areas, this is artificially inflated by humans, where there's a lot of residential waste or agricultural waste that makes more raccoons and foxes and other mammals kind of live around turtles. And then once they find where turtles are nesting, they're all over the nest. They, just like turtles, they remember where nests are laid, and they're coming back every year to try to find those nests. So while this is common that they're getting eaten, in some areas up to 100% of nests can be eaten. It's really hard to quantify, but in many areas where we're visiting, if we don't get there before the turtle, before the predator, sometimes within an hour, if I got there before the turtle, it'd be a lot better. They're getting eaten. Like, we had saw a turtle nesting, we went back to the office to get our equipment to protect our incubator. We came back and it had been eaten already. So it can really, so we leave someone behind now, the guardian. And yeah, there's other threats too. There can be illegal poaching or illegal collection. Boat strikes can be an issue in the St. Lawrence River, specifically for map turtles that are so aquatic and swimming out in wetlands and in open water. That could also mean fishing bycatch, people's hooks or fishing nets. And so the bottom line from here is that there needs to be intervention to address these threats. Even in protected areas, a lot of these, like a national park, a lot of these threats are still occurring even though the land and the habitat is protected. And this is all compounded by the kind of the life history of turtles. So they operate at a much slower scale than what's happening now, and it really limits their ability to bounce back from human-made threats. So like I said, the snapping turtle could take 17 to 19 years before laying eggs. Blanding's turtle could be 25 years. So it needs to survive from the little tiny egg to hatchling to all the way up to that age before it actually just starts laying eggs. And so it's a late maturation, and they're also laying so many eggs every year because there's an expectation that a lot of them aren't going to make it. And they're also depending on the environmental conditions, so they need the right temperature and moisture to incubate those eggs. If it's a bad year, the nest might not survive naturally anyways. And there's no parental care with turtles. They're on their way. So that leaves them a bit more vulnerable as well. And so that's why protecting and saving adults is so important. It's really one of the keys. So like if you're losing an adult turtle, you could think about it like a turtle could incubate or nest for 50 years, laying 35 eggs a year. That's almost 1,800 eggs in its life. So seeing a 17-year-old turtle get hit, that could be thousands of eggs that are lost just over time. So they're expecting to lay nests over and over again, but if you lose that adult, that can't happen. And just small losses of adults can really impact populations. This is a fun graphic that is probably simplified, but it is a good generalization. It doesn't take into account mortality, it says. But if we compare a snapping turtle to, say, a white-tailed deer, after 3 years, say there's 2 adult deers and 2 fawns. Snapping turtle is just 3 years old. It's still just a tiny little thing, really. You keep going year after year after year, still just that turtle. After 17 years, that turtle is ready to lay its first nest. There would have been 912 approximately deer that have been born, lots of adults and fawns. And it's just laying its first nest, and that nest might just get eaten that year. So it takes, many years to get that success, and that just shows the importance of adults, I think. And so to, I guess, try to take it to a more positive place about things we're doing to help these turtles. In 2019, we started the Reptile, Amphibian Recovery and Education Program, so the RARE program. And we're continuing that now under another name as Hope. Same thing, just a few different projects. And that was to help protect and recover these species of herptiles, but also focus on education quite a bit. And it's connected to the park's multi-species action plan, which plans for species at risk and other culturally significant species. And so in this project, we've been working lots on turtles and lots with partners to help advance some of this stuff, and let's get into it. So turtle nest protectors is a big one. Since 2019, hey, that's me. We've done 400 turtle nest protectors that are shared with residents, with conservation partners, or used by their park staff. A really rough calculation I did today, if you base it on the species that have used them and clutch sizes, and if we said they were 100% successful on these nests, that'd be over 10,000 eggs protected. And this is a great way to engage people. We do lots of turtle nest protector workshops, so people come in, build turtle nest protectors. Sometimes they take them home, sometimes they leave them to be shared with other people to use. And they've really been a popular thing to help you put them over the turtle's nest, and it stops the predators from digging up the eggs. We've done nest protector workshops with lots of groups. We've got people out on the islands even using them, thanks to some resident associations. We've done this with stewardship councils and schools and lots of different people. Another thing we've been getting into a little bit is artificial nesting sites. So this is a site in the park that tries to attract turtles away from the dangerous roadside and lay eggs closer to their habitat to kind of prevent that. We have had some success with this site of snapping turtles nesting here. They still need protection. But eventually this site will be paired with wildlife fencing, and I think that'll make a difference, because right now turtles can still travel to where they want to go. So most turtles are bypassing it, but we have had some success with turtles nesting here and choosing this site as their nesting site. And we've been doing turtle egg incubation. So we incubate vulnerable turtle nests. Most of these are on roadsides where we can't place turtle nest protectors. So in many counties, you're not allowed to put a nest protector on the shoulder of the road for people that are pulling over. So those nests are typically deemed vulnerable, and we can collect them under permits. Most of these areas we collect from, we've surveyed and seen super high predation, almost 100% in some areas. And yeah, so we collect the eggs in the spring, in late May, early June, and we're doing this to kind of offset the threats of turtle nest predation, but a big part of it is also the education part of it. And yeah, we keep the eggs for about 60 to 90 days. Shouldn't have done so many pictures of myself on here, scary to look at. And last year, there's 4 species here. The painted turtle hatched the next day, but we had all 5 species, which was great. You can see some snapping turtles hatching on the left there. And the incubator, which you saw in the last photo here, just looks like a mini fridge, is set to a temperature that can produce a mixed sex clutch. So the temperature is kind of in between, ideal for male and female. And we're should be producing mixed sex. And yeah, we've been doing that for several years. And more turtle pictures. This is great. Since 2019, we're almost at 1,100 turtles released from all 5 species back into home wetlands. And this summer, we released our 1,000th turtle hatchling with some folks from Mohawk Council Bakwasasne in the park, which was great. it's been great working with them to work on their incubation program, and we've been supporting another conservation group in our area to help start an incubation program as well, to try to get more people involved. And yeah, really so we're helping recover some localized wetlands, but a big part of this is education too. So we try to get as many people involved in turtle releases as we can. So I'd say we probably, for 1,100 turtles, we've had close to 1,000 people release turtles. A lot of these are kids, camps, and it's really an opportunity for that hands-on conservation moment. Kids are naming their turtles, adults are naming their turtles, and really kind of a moment with a tiny turtle that you wouldn't have before, and had kids that come back in the camp and they remember their turtle names from the year before, so it's a memorable thing for them, and hopefully get growing the future conservationists for turtles. Some more sciencey things to point out here. The top left, that is an eastern musk turtle, the stink pod, and it weighed 2.1 grams, which was pretty common for that clutch and pretty average for what we've seen. So just tiny turtles, only 3 to 6 of them in the clutch. These turtles would take around 60 to 90 days to hatch. Then they would come out of their shells eventually. We'd put them back into the incubator. This is called a yolk sac, and this provides the nutrients that turtle hatchlings need to start their lives. And so they shouldn't go in the water while that's still out there. So they're put back in the incubator until that's more absorbed to prevent infection. And then within 7 days, or if their clutch hatches before, we release them back to the wetlands. Another one of my favorite things is the egg tooth, or what's it called officially, the carbuncle, I think. That's used to cut out of a shell. So it's kind of a tooth. It's made more of like fingernail material, but I call it the tooth. It's the only tooth that they'll ever have, I say, because they don't have teeth, but they use that to cut out of their shell to climb out, and they lose it usually within a week or two. So if you ever saw a turtle hatchling that big, you would know it is pretty freshly hatched. A new thing we're doing is turtle movement research. So we're doing radio telemetry of Blanding's turtles in the park. So we have critical habitat in the park. We know they're there. We know most of the habitats there, and we just don't know much about them. We don't know where they're traveling, where they're nesting, what roads they're commonly moving across. And so we started that last year. We have 3 turtles tagged. We're hoping to get up to 15 this year. We have support from a U Ottawa student this year to take a more focused approach to the study. But yeah, for the park, we're really want to know those things about how they're interacting with major roadways, ways we can prevent them getting hit, protect areas that are overwintering or nesting. So we've learned some good things about that already. I've seen them using key vernal pools. One of our turtles was on a major roadway. We thought we lost it or couldn't find it, and within just a few days it had traveled 1 kilometer over several ridges back into the park wetland, which was a great thing to see, but just showed how far they can travel in such a quick time. And yeah, we're going to continue that. So once in the next couple weeks, we'll start trying to capture more turtles. You can see there the transmitters on the back of its shell. It's a radio transmitter that we pick up a signal with this. They kind of each have their own radio station. We tune into it, it'll beep. It gets louder when you get closer, to put it simply, and then you can kind of get right close to it to find out where they are and how they're spending their time. And we'll continue that soon. Another thing that's really key for protecting turtles is wildlife eco-passages. So this rare program, also known as On the Road Again, many names, it's also, we are doing it with other Ontario national parks, so Georgian Bay Islands National Park, Bruce Peninsula. Some of those sites have put in wildlife eco-passages in the parks, and are seeing turtle movement through it. So you can see that one is just on grade, and there's wildlife fencing that guides them through it. We have been planning one for a wetland in the park, as you can see in this photo, and we have funding to improve passageway at this site here, which we're excited about and should happen in the next little while. Something else that we've been doing is getting a bit into eDNA species detection. So eDNA, to put really simply, you collect water, you push the water through a filter. That filter picks up the DNA of what's been living in the water. I give that filter to Queen's University. They do all the hard stuff. They chemically extract it. We've been using, it's a PCR method. We've been using ddPCR, which is like highly sensitive and specific to detect certain species. And we've used that to find that really secretive eastern musk stink pot turtle. So we found it in one spot where we did a lot of physical surveys, swimming, flipping lily pads, could not find it, but confirmed it with this. And then we found it at another new habitat that wasn't previously known. And we also found it at a new site for two-line salamander that we're going to follow up with physical surveys. And a main important thing for this is the outreach and education. So aside from this more recovery actions, we try to engage with lots of different people. So we have a dock talk series where we go to local marina and try to engage boaters, talk about looking out for turtles, people that are living on islands, how they can help. We're working with many partners like MCA, the Aquatarium in Brockville. We have an exhibit there showing off our incubator in public and have some eggs incubating there. We do a talk series there as well. A big thing that I talked about is the nest protector workshops. We usually do a few a year, and then our turtle releases as well. Then we've done summer camps and school events and all sorts of stuff. So that's a really key part of this program, is to educate people on turtles. Didn't know how much time I would have, but I think I'm running a bit long, so I won't get into much. But other projects we've done, it's not just about turtles. We've done a lot of work with vernal pools, so temporary wetlands and forests that are key for a lot of amphibians to breed and for Blanding's turtles to visit, where we worked with Environment Canada and predicted where vernal pools would be throughout the Thousand Islands area. It was about an 80% detection rate, and it's led to many new forest frog observations. And similar to that Blanding's turtle study, I did it with gray rat snakes as well. That's the longest snake in Canada. And there was a population where we would see in the spring a bunch of snakes hanging out, but we didn't know where they came from. We did telemetry with them and confirmed that they were hibernating and spending most of their time in the national park. Now we're doing turtles. And so ways that everyone can help is, one thing is to help turtles across the road. And like I said, adults are so important. So if you're helping an adult across the road, it can make a huge difference. The most important thing for this is your safety, making sure it's safe to help a turtle across the road, looking out for yourself first. But for all turtles, other than snapping turtles, you can pick it up with two hands. They say like a hamburger or a sandwich or something. And you really want to see which way it's going. So sometimes you might just want to wait and see where it's going, if the turtle's not a threat either. Because sometimes you can be fooled about which way a turtle's actually going. So then you always want to move it the way that it was going, because turtles are very, they always know where they're going. They know where they want to go, and if you turn them around, you'll drive back on the road, they'll be there again. And be at risk again, you won't be helping them. And snapping turtles are a bit different just because they have such a long neck and mouth. They can reach pretty much halfway down their shell. You always want to approach it from behind. When you get close, they usually start bouncing, trying to snap. And one way is to lift the turtle up using the pizza method, sliding a hand on the belly, holding it by the back of the shell. That's a pretty tough way, but once you get doing it a couple times, you'll feel comfortable doing it. Another way to do it is just grabbing it by the back of the shell, dragging it across the road. Some people have shovels in their car, they kind of push them along the road. For a really big one, one time I put my car mat I brought my car mat out, put the turtle on the car mat, and dragged it across. You don't want to pick it up by the tail. That can hurt the turtle, but really any other way you can get it across the road is a benefit if it's not going to end up dead. But those are some of the best methods to help it get across. And if you find an injured turtle, the Ontario Turtle Conservation Centre is the best resource in Ontario to call. If you have a box, you can keep it inside a dry box, just in the dark. Turtles are quite resilient, even with big injuries. You'll be surprised at what they can survive. So you can give a call to that number. Sometimes there's people driving turtle taxis. There's a lot of people around Kingston doing it. And they'll drive them to the nearest rehabber, or where possible. Don't feed the turtle, and just keep it in a safe spot. And get involved. There's a network, the OTCN. You go on there. There's a map. It'll show you people doing turtle work in the area. There's also iNaturalist. It's always great to share observations. If you're sharing turtles, or rare species at risk, you should obscure them if it's not getting done already. But iNaturalist is a great way to share that as well. And so that brings me to the end. So yeah, thank you everyone for tuning in. And,
All right, thanks, Matt. Turtles are actually my favorite species, so I was very excited. So we do have about 6 to 7 minutes for questions. So if anyone has any, yeah, come over here.
Could you talk a little bit about overwintering strategy?
yeah, so for overwintering strategies, it depends a lot by species. So species like snapping turtle, painted turtle, they are typically burrowing in the mud, and they're able to tolerate quite low oxygen conditions. But they're really just burrowing in the mud in a temperature around 1 to 2 degrees. They want it to get as cold as possible, but not freezing. They want to avoid freezing as much as they can, but kind of live on that borderline. Turtles, more like the musk turtle and the map turtle, they need a bit more of an oxygenated area, so they might not be in the mud, they might just be more in the bottom. But they're finding that spot in October up until right about now, just entering that state, and they're quite loyal to the spots they find. If it's still there, they'll return to the same overwintering sites. We found a few overwintering sites with our telemetry project so far, and excited to see where those guys move.
When you say mud, at the bottom of a stream or swamp?
Yeah, like in a marsh, in a stream, anywhere that doesn't fully freeze through. Yeah, but it can be, harsh winters can be tough on turtles.
A turtle lay 30 eggs. How many of those eggs will hatch from the 3 eggs?
Under the right condition, they'll all hatch.
You know?
Or many, I shouldn't say they'll hatch. It's hard to know, like in natural nests, to generalize across so many, but it's usually, when we're doing incubation, we're typically seeing anywhere between 80 to 100% nest hatching, and I think in nature it's probably a bit less because conditions aren't perfect.
Yeah.
So yeah, it depends on the year and the condition, but a majority would be surviving. The real threat is predation, and then once they hatch, they're so small, they're still at risk for a few years.
I read an article, so I'm really not sure where I'm going with this, but the turtles are attracted to the lights, the false lights of the moon in high rises and stuff, and so in some countries that they're prohibiting high rises to have clear windows reflecting the lights, that they have to protect it for the turtles. Is that any concern at all around here?
I really don't know much about that. I can't speak too much about that. I haven't read that or know much about it. I know turtles, they know where they're going. They have this homing instinct to know where they want to go, and if things are in their way, that can be a problem for them. That's an interesting thing though. I'll have to see about that. Yeah. I did read a study where they recognize they can sometimes recognize visual cues to navigate, but yeah, so if there's things blocking how they usually navigate, that can be a problem, I guess.
I've observed this somewhere. You talk about road mortality. I sometimes drive Highway 62 towards Bancroft. There's an area probably at least a mile long where there's some wetlands on both sides,
Mm.
and they've installed relatively small fences, which, to my observation, are about not letting turtles getting onto the road. And I've never looked very closely to understand what they're made of, but they're literally this high, right?
Yeah.
Turtles never get by that. I don't know if that's used in places. Now, go to your eco passes,
Mm.
because if you got two wetlands and now they're disconnected by effectively a turtle fence.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't see evidence of an eco pass that you're talking about, which is an interesting concept,
Mm.
right?
Yeah.
But
Ideally,
I don't know if it, you interrupt the migration, if that's a bad thing, but you're keeping them off the road, so maybe that's a good thing. So I don't know what they're.
Yeah, it's a trade-off. Like in the ideal situation, you're building an eco passage, so a bigger culvert where turtles can pass freely, and they have connected landscapes, and there's wildlife fencing that is directing them into that. That's kind of like the gold standard
But
for keeping that.
These fences, are they in common use or not? Are they just experimental or something?
There's starting to be more wildlife fencing around Ontario. I've noticed there's some along the 401 in the Thousand Islands region.
I've almost seen some of this turtle fencing through Gananoque. So
Yes.
I'm trying to understand. I've never paid huge attention to it, but to me, it's not going to stop much wildlife. It almost has to be directed into
If you're seeing it around wetlands and it's that height, it's typically, I'd say, for turtles. And it's a trade-off. If it's a really at-risk population, you're balancing. You might be separating the habitats, but if you're going to lose all the turtles to road mortality, is it worth it? It's
I just wondered if
they're
they're just being in test areas or whether that's becoming more common. I don't know.
I think it's becoming more common. Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks, Matt. This was a really great talk. It was very fun to learn about all these species a bit more. I was wondering, how much does it cost to put in one of those eco passages, like the one that you guys are working on in the Thousand Islands? Do you have any estimate of what the cost is?
I don't know the updated cost estimate for that one, but it can be expensive. It's especially roads that are already in place. Ideally, you're putting these things in when roads are being created or roads are being renovated. I don't know what the word is, but they can be really expensive and add up quickly, especially kind of these older roads. But that can be the barrier to most of these projects going on.
Well, as I see that, go to England lots and you see cattle grids, right, which deal with sheep and cattle moving.
Yeah.
And it strikes me that that's a different kind of thing, but it's there. But those things have got to hold vehicles up, so there's got to be a lot of structure to them.
Yeah.
You can't, for weight of some vehicles going over it.
Yeah.
I think some of the one there was like the one that they built in Quebec on the when they did the construction on the way into Montreal. I think they published the costs of that construction project, so maybe you can get an idea
I'm
there.
just interested. I mean, obviously, you can't just put a grate over a road and then hope it's going to be strong enough to.
The one in the park is kind of just an oversized culvert that will go over the road.
Okay.
It won't be with the grates on it. Yeah.
Okay.
I think we do have. Oh, you have a question?
Also, I've actually got a question.
Okay. Last
Before we go to
question.
the it was related to the earlier. You mentioned how there's a decent amount of it's happening a lot with animals figuring out where they are and hanging out there and waiting for when they should have some food. But so I guess I'm wondering, was that something that's been happening more and more, or is that something that was already happening? And if it's something that's increasing, would it be caused by lack of available nesting grounds, which makes it easier for other animals to track their location, their areas, or like by human development, or lack of food or resources for the other animals, so they're more relying on the turtles? Is there any why that, if it's increasing?
That's a good question. I don't know for sure if that's a new thing or not. I'm sure it's always been happening because mass predation is a natural thing that has been occurring. I think it might just be happening more in specific areas where there is more nest predators, like foxes and raccoons that are there. But yeah, I at our nesting site we have time-lapse cameras to try to capture the turtles nesting there, and there was raccoons that would come visit the nesting site every day, even if there wasn't a turtle nesting there. It was just expecting it to happen soon.
So, just a bit of guidance. Turtles bask and they'll climb up on trees and things that's right just above the surface of the water. One example I have, one I've seen at the River Institute, is they purposely put a raft in part of their inlet, and you see turtles on it. In behind my mother's house, there's a little bit of where the Cornwall Canal comes across 2nd Street, and there's a little inlet. And I know because I've been there, seen turtles, and in fact, some turtles came up and nested in my mother's garden. But I had some wood sitting around, and I thought, I got to do something with this waste wood. So I built a raft. I put a slope on it so that is there, anchored it, tried to throw it out and anchor it, and I've now seen turtles on there. And I don't know if that's just useful or it's good habitat. I'm not sure in terms of preserving turtles, but
yeah, I think
there isn't a lot of stuff in that pond
that's the
that
thing,
they can be on, and so I've added to that.
Yeah, in areas where there's not a lot of basking areas, it can certainly help them.
I mean, it's not dealing with incubation and species and breeding, but it gives them habitat to bask on, which is probably a good thing generally, right?
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
So we do have a question online that Emily is going to read out.
I'm online. Bojang, who's working at the River Institute, is wondering if there are any hotspots for roadkill and injuries in your study areas, and if so, will there be any proactive countermeasures in these specific areas?
There has been studies done like that along the Thousand Islands Parkway. In the late 2000s, there was people riding their bikes every day along the parkway, counting all the roadkill, and they did that for April to October, counting like 16,000 animals, and so there is kind of detailed hotspots along the parkway. There has been studies done along the 401 as well, and those are available in literature, and there's been recommendations made for the 401 and for the parkway. And some things have happened along the 401, like the wildlife fencing we talked about, but there's still a lot of work to be done there.
The one thing I've seen more in the city now, never used to be, but road signs that indicate turtles may be crossing, right? And they'll put May to September or whatever that is. Now, whether that has an effect, for somebody just driving home from wherever, I don't know, but it creates an awareness, I suppose.
Yeah.
So it's not going to be any use on the 401, right?
No, not there.
All right. Perfect. So that's our time up for now. Matt, if you guys do have questions, I'm sure Matt will be here a little longer, or you can reach him through Parks Canada as well. So we'll see you all on April 16th for Patricia O'Hara's presentation.